Hello, family, friends, and fellow sojourners. I wanted to let you know that when my husband and I first got married, we started out kind of on a rocky start. He had talked me into flying from Denver to Carson City, Nevada, because he was in the Navy and he'd just come back from Vietnam. His ship had just arrived, and I hadn't seen him for almost a year, and I really didn't know whether I still loved him. We had been separated long enough that I had to question that, and so I wanted to go and see him because he said he was going to have to do another tour, and of course I wanted to go and see him and see if I still loved him, and so I did fly out to Carson City, and my sister-in-law said to me, "So you and Gary have finally decided to get married?" And I said, "We have? News to me." But it took him a couple of days, but he convinced me that we still loved each other, and so I married him at a little wedding chapel in Carson City, Nevada, in the wee hours of the morning. And just like today, it was daylight savings time, so I thought it was bad enough the hour we got married, but we added an hour onto that. And so I came back home and I quit my job as a student teacher at Daniels Elementary in Lakewood, and Gary made arrangements to find an apartment for us. It was a terrible, terrible choice, but that's another story. So he flew back to Denver. I packed everything I owned in the back of a Volkswagen Bug, and it was piled in the back seat. It was piled high with all of my belongings. And I got to the airport about the same time he was supposed to arrive, and I parked in the front of the building at Stapleton Airport, and because I didn't have money for parking, and I thought, well, Gary's going to come right out pretty quickly, so why do I have to pay for parking? So as it turned out, he was delayed, and I didn't know that. And this security guard came up and tapped on the window, and he said, "Ma'am, you can't park here. You're going to have to move." So I said, "Okay." So apparently I had left my headlights on the car as I was waiting for him, and when I went to start the car, the battery was dead. And this man, and I keep rolling back because I'm really at the crest of a hill, and I keep rolling back as every time I tried to pop the clutch and get it started or whatever, and nothing worked. And I'm in tears because he's getting upset with me. And about that time, about 20 minutes later, Gary came and tapped on the window. I was so glad to see him. I was so thankful he was finally there. I told him what the situation was, so he gave me a little push up over the crest of the hill, jumped in the car, I popped the clutch, car started, and on we went. Well, this was probably about 8 o'clock at night, and we drove till almost midnight when we got up into Wyoming, and we found a motel, but we hated to spend the money for a motel because it was so late and we knew we were going to have to get up early, but we did. And so about midnight we got the room, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, he said we better get on the road. We've got a long way to go. And so we went out to the car hoping that the battery was charged. No such luck. And it was a flat parking lot, and so Gary did his best to push me, could not push me fast enough. And this older man, I bet he was probably in his late 60s, early 70s, tried to assist Gary, and I was so afraid that this man was going to have a heart attack. So sure enough, they couldn't get it started. Well, a patron at the cafe that was there came out, and he said, "Would you like me to push you in my truck?" And Gary said, "Well, that'd be great." So rather than Gary taking the wheel, he said, "Okay, Trish, he's going to push you down the highway there." And so I got ready, and he pushed me down the highway. Zoom. Car didn't start. He turned me around. Zoom the other way. I guess it'd be that way. Anyway, it didn't start. And he pushed me back into the parking lot, and I came to a stop, and Gary tapped on the window. He said, "Trish, you did have the key on, didn't you?" And I looked down, and I forgot to put the key on. So it was a true test of my husband's character. He didn't yell at me, which is what I was used to with my stepfather. Every time I made a mistake, he would just get nasty about it. And so I expected Gary to at least yell at me, and he didn't. He was very kind, and he said, "Okay, let's." And the guy says, "Well, I'll push you again." So again, he let me take the wheel and turn the key on, and the guy didn't have to push me very far. But when I popped the clutch, it started right up. But the problem is that I had everything I owned in the back of that car. And do you know where the battery is on a VW Bug? It's under the back seat where all my stuff was. So my husband literally had to push me every time we stopped. We had to make sure it was kind of on a hill, and he would have to push me. He pushed me every time we stopped all the way to California. It showed the true character of a man. And I'll tell you, it was a valuable lesson to me in so many ways, because it showed me that my husband had the patience and the love for me that that blessed me back in the day, early on in our marriage, and he's been doing it ever since. So anyway, I hope you got a laugh out of my foolishness at my expense, because that's the gospel truth. That's what happened. I hope you enjoyed this story. Take care now. God bless you. Bye-bye.